Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and welcome to a man who happens to be coming in all the way from Potts Point in Sydney, wearing a Red Forest jersey, but he's also utilising exactly the same Rode microphone as my good self. So, Mr. Gough, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Darren. Good to be here.
And the dulcet tones coming through the Rode microphone it's just beautiful.
They're really good. They are really good. And we were just talking before we came on here. The chairman lives across the road. The chairman, the founder of Rode, and we're talking about getting hold of people. And I know how hard it is out there at the moment for salespeople getting in front of people and trying to just to get a response.
Yeah.
So because he lives across the road, I thought I bumped into him the other day because he got out of his Rolls Royce, and I thought I'm just going to send him a quick email. So of course, any good salesperson knows how to find an email address, right? So
that's right.
And literally, as I'm cooking dinner, 7:30, I sent it. By 8 o'clock, I got a reply from him, and I'm like, holy moly.
Yeah.
I had a half an hour backwards and forwards saying, because I was convinced it was him, but then he was convinced, no, it wasn't me, because I wasn't very well. I think he was a little bit drunk. And it ended up being his EA who stepped out of the car, out of the back of so the actual Rolls Royce was on the driveway. Somebody stepped out the back. I thought it was him.
Yeah.
That wasn't him. That was his EA. He was actually driving.
He's driving his EA.
I think his own Rolls Royce, yeah.
Mate, that is the ultimate form of service, isn't it?
But a lovely guy. I mean, what made it stand out to me was the fact that he's worth multi-billions of dollars, and he replied straight away.
Yeah.
Yet some of these execs that we write to ignore us.
Yes.
And they don't reply. And I can't quite work it out. But the more senior a person is, the more likely I am to get a response for some reason. And I don't know why, but it's almost like the mid to lower levels. And I think we were talking about this before. I think there's something about the psychology of being over-targeted in Australia. I think a lot of the execs are over-targeted by inbound from offshore and everywhere else, and they get too much.
Yeah.
And so the natural response is, leave me alone.
Yes. Which then means, from a selling perspective, and we'll talk about this in terms of the company that you run and the philanthropic work that you do, we have to be even more targeted in terms of the value we can provide to them, not the value we think they can provide to us. So always thinking what's in it for them to want to even respond to an email or pick up a phone call or even entertain a possible meeting, whether it be over Zoom or face-to-face. So it's really interesting. And I find the same thing, especially working with sales teams that are trying to penetrate a certain company or a certain market. You know, sometimes those salespeople are also reluctant to go high. They go too low and they don't get the type of responses they're looking for, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, there's something about, I mean, I always wondered how Australia has this psychology of leave me alone. You know, I think it was David Ogilvy that once said, in the modern world of business, it's useless to be creative, an original thinker, unless you can actually also sell what you create. And this for me is, we've created something that's really unique. It's a new market. It's a brand new category. And if we're not good at selling it, well, what's the point? And so, I had a chat with a senior sales peer of mine who was saying how hard it was in Australia to get time with people versus in Asia, for example.
Yeah.
And he used a lot of swear words, but it got me thinking about what that was. And so I sort of started to take a look at the cultural differences to try and find out why. And I think it's quite fascinating that Australia's sales ecosystem has a negative feedback loop for outbound vendors. And it's low engagement, and it reinforces sort of vendor fatigue and all that sort of stuff. And so you've almost got to reduce the outreach quality almost. Whereas Asia is the opposite. It's got a positive feedback loop, and they've got higher engagement, and that's better targeted outreach. So I wondered why all this was happening. And when you start delving into it, you realize there's there's a lot of things culturally that make this thing up. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. There's a Dutch social psychologist. I think his name's Gert Hofstede,
Okay.
and he created this thing called the Hofstede cultural dimension theory to help
Okay.
understand what's going on here. So basically, it's a framework that each country has, and they get ranked based on I think there's a thing called the power distance indicator. There's
Yes.
individualism, there's avoidance, there's masculinity, and there's collectivism. And I think when you look at these numbers, Australia is a clear standout to everywhere else. So
Mm,
from an individualism perspective versus collectivism, this is about whether people prioritize personal goals over group goals.
mm,
And so this is the reason why it's so hard to get into people in Australia, because in Asia, uh, people it's all about we rather than me. And I think Australia, it means the execs in Australia value independence and self-reliance and personal achievement.
yes.
Whereas in Asia, it's more about what can I do to help the
Yeah.
group sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so we've got to position ourselves differently here, very differently.
Mm.
And that one thing, that cultural difference really does stand out. And you feel it. You feel it when you get told to bugger off when you call somebody.
And it's interesting you say that because if you think about Australia being one of the most multicultural countries on the planet, we have a lot of Asian, European people that are here,
Hmm.
and they sometimes can bring some of those, I guess, cultural traits in, but very quickly they have to, in order to survive within the culture or the ecosystem of Australia, they almost have to take on some of the Australian cultural elements. So they start to be part of the machine, which is really challenging as well.
It really is. It's noticeable. I mean, my friend Jeremy, he's top class guy. Been in sales for many years. Doesn't go in there selling product. He talks value and all that stuff. He
Mm,
does a pretty good job. He's high end salespeople. They've been around for a long time. And he just said, I mean, literally, he said to me, "Why is it so hard here? I've just spent
yeah,
10 years in Asia. You pick up the phone and call someone, you go and have a coffee.
yeah,
They're a part of the ecosystem. Whereas
yes,
here, you pick up the phone and call someone, it's like, leave me alone. It's like they don't want to be a part of that ecosystem.
yeah,
Don't sell to me.
yeah,
Don't, I'm not even interested in what you've got to say unless I'm actually looking right now.
yes.
And that I think that's an opportunity lost for everybody.
Oh, it is absolutely. And before we press record, we were talking about the importance of giving and how it feels to give, and we translate that into the sales realm. And so when you think about it, sales is giving. If you think about it that way, rather than the receiving part. So I love to talk to you about your background and how Meet Magic came about. But for the listeners' benefit, I should do a proper introduction after being on for about 10 minutes. Just for people's interest, you are the founder and CEO and probably is it the chief philanthropist
Ah,
of
yeah.
meetmagic.org?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, philanthropist, founder, CEO.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the chief idiot who does everything basically. And
And you
with
respond to emails because I've been getting emails from you and it's quick.
yeah, I mean, I actually don't believe in filling up your diary. I think it's
No.
the worst thing you can do because you miss opportunities like this to have a chat.
Yeah.
If you filled up your diary back to back, well, that's your fault.
Yeah, that's it.
And so I literally don't do that. And I try and operate on a gut feeling basis, and I think that works for me. Whatever needs to be done today will get done,
Yeah.
and
Love it.
it seems to I don't know gut feel. But the whole Meet Magic thing came around after 20 years in sales. I
Mm,
spent you know started off my career knocking on doors like everybody, selling cable television. That was my first sales job when I was 26 in Australia as a backpacker. And then I got into the telecom markets. I think I was employee number 22 at Macquarie Corporate,
okay.
which is now Macquarie. So I know David and Aidan Tudor, I hope I know. And in fact, his grandmother and his sister were on the payroll. Used to sit in the office back then. They don't anymore. And they're worth billions now. But it's that's where I started my career. And then I got my first real that was on the phones actually, cold calling. That was my first job with them as a kid. And then I got a job with Richard Vincent, who's dead now. He was the CEO of World Exchange, and we were flogging minutes, switched
Mm,
minutes. Remember the good old days of telecom?
absolutely.
Amazing stories from back then of being a backpacker. And Richard said to me once, he said, Carl, we've lost this customer. The customer's called Snow Transport, big transport company in Sydney. He said, go and get them back for me. I had no idea what I was doing. And so I got in a taxi and went down to Botany where they were based. And I walked into the reception, walked up to the reception desk, and I said, I'm looking for the boss. And she goes, what? I said, I'm looking for Mr. Snow. Is he here?
It's just no.
She goes, who are you? I said, my boss has sent me to come and get the business back. I've got to come and talk to him. Is he here? As naive as it was,
Yeah.
she went out the back and called somebody. And this guy sticks his head out. He says, what do you want? And I said, I'm looking for Mr. Snow. He said, that's me. Come on in.
Oh, really?
Straight up. And I sat down with him across the table. He says, what do you want? I said, my boss Richard sent me down to get the business back. There were 20 grand a month in business, right?
Yeah.
He's asked me to come in here and do a deal. What have I got to do to get your business back?
Yeah.
He said, if you can make 30% discount, he said, I'll do the deal. So I called Richard. He said, do it. And we signed the contract. And I walked home with the contract in my hand.
Amazing.
Sales. But that's what you had to do. I think naivety played a big part in that. So I had no idea what I was doing, right? It's like, even in business now, I think there's a sense of that naivety that actually helps you because you don't know. Because I think if you put too much of a focus and a lens on it, especially if you put I don't know, if you put a PwC or an EY lens on, you would never ever start a business like what we've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot. The journey's been quite interesting. In 20 years in tech, and then my last job was with Aruba, the wireless guys, and we did a big deal with Westfield shopping centres. We did all the big tour of duty. We took all the Westfield exec directors over to the US to do a EBC executive briefing center tour. All that stuff, all that rubbish that you do. And we sold the deal. So if you go into a Westfield shopping centres now, you connect to the Wi-Fi. That was my deal, and that was really my last sales job where I sort of got to the point thinking I'm kind of tired of doing these deals and not feeling anything, and I wanted to do something special. I didn't know what it was, and then my daughter and I were watching. She was, I think, 11 or 12 at the time. She's 23 now, 22 now. We were watching this TV show called Growing Up Poor in Australia, and it's about a suburb in Sydney that's housed the poorest of the poor.
Yeah,
and it was basically this suburb that was 50 miles from where we live, and there was all these kids under 15 going to school hungry. They've watched their parents and their grandparents grow up poor, on the dole, drug addicts, alcoholics, whatever. And so these kids had no interest in going to school. It reminded me very much of where I come from.
Yeah,
which is Nottingham. Same sort of growing up for me. It was poor. There was nothing around. I left school at 15, left home at 16. I've got no qualifications to my name. And I used to babysit prostitutes' kids to make money. It was tough.
Yeah.
It was the way we grew up. There was when my son was born, I had to burn some clothes in the back garden to warm a bottle of milk up. We were poor.
Yeah.
And this is what poverty is in today's language. But that built grit, it built determination, it built all those strong stuff that we are today, and the lack of fear about having a go and where we are today. And so I thought, what are we going to do? So we brought 300 kids to Bondi from that area. I raised some money from some rich people that I know.
Yeah.
The Goodman family. And I don't know if you remember Michael Hart from the Commonwealth Bank. He was the CIO.
Yeah.
I got him to tip in $500 and whatever. And we basically brought these kids to Bondi for some inspiration and to try and change the course of their destiny. And so they don't have to go through a shit period of their life and then figure out how am I going to get ahead.
Yeah.
So that was the starting point where I knew that I wanted to do something in sort of the giving space. We're talking about giving here. And that was off the back of that. Channel 9 introduced me to a charity called Feel the Magic. And Feel the Magic is all around helping kids deal with grief when they've lost a parent or a sibling. So James, the founder of that charity, had no idea how to scale it. So I introduced him to basically a community that could help him do that. And then he's gone off and scaled that. And that's really where meetmagic started. It was about this community of charities that were trying to scale, all had the same problem, and it was all about fundraising. How do we
Yeah.
raise money by, it was a sustainable fundraising model that they were looking for without doing the black tie event. So
Yes.
without spending 100 grand to go and make 150, how,
Yeah.
how do you make 150 without doing anything? And
Yeah.
so that's what Meat Magic is. Meat Magic is the ability for them to raise funds without doing anything. And all they have to do is engage their corporate supporters, to sit down and have a cup of coffee once a month. It's like anyone can do that.
And I noticed on your website you've got a lot of iconic, not just Australian brands but global brands there.
Yeah.
Um, we were just talking before about the cultural differences between Asia and Australia. Can you just talk me through the because no startup is a zero to hero story.
Mm.
And I've read a little bit about your background coming from Nottingham and how you came to New Zealand with literally not much in your pocket and
Yeah.
thinking about what I'm going to do. And I think the story goes you're in a tent in rather than in a backpacker because it was cheaper to be in a tent
Yeah.
outside
Yeah.
than inside. Got a job in construction, but then there was a time when you walked in and you got a job as a marketer in an organization, and that was the start. And that lady took a chance on you.
Her name was Joan Salter. She's dead now. Bless her. But my first, so I left New Zealand after 6 months, working on the casino, building the Sky City. I was sticking all those metal plates in at the bottom
Okay,
of the doors. So if you go into that casino and kick one of those doors, you're kicking
that's
me.
your work.
It's my work.
It's got
In
your
fact,
fingerprints on it.
in fact, there's a couple of execs at the casino now who are on board with Meat Magic,
Oh, nice.
and that's how I got them. I said, "Bro, you're walking through those doors. I stuck them on." just, just having a bit of fun with them. But yeah, that was 1996. I just arrived in Australia. I got here with $60. I landed in Melbourne, and I went to St Kilda, and I thought, this is shit. I'm never going to find a job here. So I didn't even stay the night. I went straight to the bus shelter and caught a 40 something dollar overnight bus to Sydney, a Greyhound.
Okay,
Literally had the overnight bus. I arrived in King's Cross at the Backpackers at the Jolly Swagman, which is 5 minutes up the road from me here in Potts Point. And I checked into the Backpackers and I had $17 left in my that's all I had to my name.
yeah,
And I gave them my passport. I said, look, I'm really broke. I'm going to find a job and help me out. Here's my passport. I'm not going anywhere. And they said, sure, no problem. I don't know if they do that today, but that's what they did. Anyway, so I came down the next morning after sleeping, and they said, look, I've got a job here. It's a day job, painting some skirting boards with some gay guys. Do you want to do it? And I said, I'm not doing it by myself, but I'll do it. And this naive, I had no idea. I mean, gay people for me was not. They just weren't on my radar. So
I'm
I
not
said,
doing it on my
just
own.
just incredible stories. And we went and painted. There's two of us went and painted skirting boards for these gay guys' apartment, and they fed us a Thai lunch. I think that was the first time ever eaten Thai food.
Wow.
And then they gave us a bag of marijuana and $80 for the day as payment. And I thought, great. Well, I knew what to do with the marijuana. I took it straight back to the backpackers and flogged it, and I paid a week's rent.
Wow.
True story. This is like today. That's what I had to do, and I paid that money, and then I went to the city as I put a shirt and tie on, and I went to the city, and I was walking around the city centre looking for the tallest building I could find, and I went straight to the top of the MLC centre, level 52, I think it was.
Yeah.
I walked straight to the reception, and I said to the receptionist, I said, I'm looking for the boss. I've got this thing about looking for the boss, right? This is like, who are you? And there was this 6 foot ginger haired lady stood there. She goes, I'm the boss. Who are you? I said, I'm looking for a job. She goes, what do you want to do? I said, I'll do some marketing. I don't know. And she goes, follow me. And she took me on a tour of it was Servcorp offices.
Okay.
Alf Mufarage, if you know Alf.
Yeah.
Um, and I saw, I don't know if anyone knows this, but up level 52 on the MLC Centre, there's a full size swimming pool.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, I had no idea, but I'm like, wow. And she takes me into her office, and we're sitting there, and I'm looking out over the Sydney Harbour and the Opera House, going, "Holy shit! Look how high we are!" And it's naive, right? I had no idea what, but I was amazed. And she poured me a cup of coffee, and she goes, "I'll give you $1 million in marketing budget. What are you going to do with it?" I have no idea. Anyway, she said, obviously I didn't get any job with her, but she said, look, here's a guy, go and give him a call. And so I got out of the MLC center, I called this guy, and he had the contract for selling cable television door to door for Optus. And I met with him on a platform at Central Station. We had a cigarette together, smoking back then, and we talked about stuff. And he says, "Come in tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, and we'll see if you're the right fit for the business." Little did I know it was all the MLM marketing scam, and you're not getting it's fully commission only, and that is it. You're knocking on doors, flogging stuff, and you're on your own. And they took you out for the day and trained you how to knock on doors.
Yeah,
And this was when I say the best training I've ever had, you've got 1 second when they open that door.
yeah,
Smile, eye contact, and a bit of enthusiasm. Because without it, you're
yeah.
not going anywhere.
That's it.
I broke records. I sold so much cable television. I had these kids running down the street after me in Mount Druitt. Cable guys here, cable guys here. I said, here's a form, give it to your mum. I'll come and collect it. Here's a form, give it to your mum. And I go back with 50 forms, and I think I got $20 per form filled out or whatever it was back then. And I built a team around that.
That is
That was my
amazing.
introduction to sales.
And normally back in the day, you'd have the little kids running down because the gelati van was coming down to sell ice cream. Here you are, being the cable guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's the same thing.
they had this principle called sex. It was smile, eye contact, and excitement. And I always used to say excitement doesn't start with an X, but it was just an acronym. But
Yeah.
it was that whole how to meet somebody for the first time in a split second and have an engagement with them. And I think there's a lot of that is lost today
Mm.
because I think a lot we talk about giving when you go into a meeting with an exec. We've got to train a lot of these sales teams to go and add value. Do a bit of research. I mean,
Yeah,
you've got Chat GPT.
that's it.
You don't need to go and look at the annual report anymore. Chat GPT will do it all for you
Yeah,
and give you the
yeah,
questions to ask.
correct.
You just got to have a bit of personality and not have a charisma bypass operation and just go and have a conversation and make a friend.
100%.
That's
100%.
it.
So, Carl, there's a lot in that. One of the questions I want to ask you, and I know this probably links to what you do today in terms of bringing people together and
Mm,
dealing with humans, because at the end of the day, we are selling to humans, right? Sales is a human-based thing. Can
yeah.
you just talk to me a little bit about the importance of the people who didn't have to help you, but they chose to help you? And what was the impact of that for you, but more importantly, the lesson that you took from that. So there was at least two or three examples that you've shared. I know there was one that you didn't share with, which is about the guy giving you some bread because he didn't have any money in the backpackers. But
Yeah.
the lady in the MLC building and the guy at the cable, they didn't have to take a chance. But what was it, do you think, that made them do that, and what was the impact for you?
I think with Meat Magic, it's been, when you come up with your own idea, you doubt yourself more than anything else. This is like you get told no so many times, that unless it's really driven within your purpose to do this, you're going to give up, you're going to quit because
Yeah.
it really is hard. It's not, there's nothing nice about it. And when somebody takes a chance on you, you get really, really emotional about it. And I remember even Richard Marr today, he's still a customer today. Richard Marr was one of the first when COVID hit. Um, everything got locked down, so nobody could go to conferences.
Yeah.
And so Richard took a chance on me and put 20 grand on his credit card and bought 20 meetings through my platform. And this for me was like an emotional thing because it was literally putting food on the table. And those customers, you just look after them and you give value to them. And so
Yeah.
I find that I've got that same feeling with every one of our customers and every one of the execs who gives me their time.
Mm.
I want to make sure that everything that they get is valuable because I think if you if you if you if you're trying to sell products, probably going to get nowhere. But if you add value or solve problems, you'll probably sell product. And so this is in the charity world. I learned that if you ask for money, you might get some advice. But if you ask for advice, you might get some money. And
Yeah.
this is the impact that I've had on these people. I honestly, the Andrew Matuszaks of the world, who's one of the biggest CIOs and probably one of the best tech leaders in the country, is on my advisory board now, and he literally kept me alive getting this thing off the ground. He believed in me so much and what we were doing that he supported me in any way
Mm.
that he could, as an exec, as a friend, and whatever. And he's now a friend and a supporter. And there's so many of these now. There's the CEOs of banks that have been supporting us. In New Zealand, for example, Steve Jerkovich, the CEO of Kiwi Bank, he says to me, Carl, no one's that busy that they can't afford not to spend 45 minutes and have a coffee to do good once a month. No one. He's a CEO of a bank. And we've got other CEOs of banks now following up in New Zealand based on his lead. So this, for me, what Steve's done for us, I've got goose pimples because what he's done for us is build this trust and this social proof, which you couldn't pay for.
No.
You could not pay for that. And the only reason he's advocating like that is because he's had great experiences. Because we tell these salespeople, don't go in there and pitch your product because no one cares about your data lake unless it's got a boat on it. And this is the thing. It's about delivering value, doing some research and understanding their world, and ask for some advice. And
Mm.
and so I think there's a number of people that are out there. Even today, the new people that join us, I get flabbergasted. Just the fact that I called a guy called Ben Taylor yesterday. He's the assistant commissioner for the ATO, the taxation office. He's like one of the most senior people in the country. Loves our connections.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I lock in every third Friday of the month at 10:30. That's my time to give back. Over the course of a year, they look back and they go, wow, look at the impact we've made.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened with these execs. They've come on, they're supported in the beginning. Those early adopters, I'm treasuring them.
Mm.
We spoke about Brad Blythe earlier, and Brad's now the exec GM of Ampol, big
Mm.
pop. He was the CIO of Kmart. He's left Kmart and gone and got a job at Ampol, and he used meetmagic in his interview process.
Yes.
And this, for me, says a lot about the value that we're giving them, not only in terms of meeting vendors and solving problems and getting access to products, but what it feels like to be human, to give back. Because I think
Yeah.
most of these execs, they're so busy, they don't have time to go volunteering at the shelter.
No.
But they all want to go home at night and say, I've done something good today.
Yeah.
And we give them that in a coffee.
Yeah. And
It's
so and so with that, can you just explain for the listeners in terms of the because many years ago you mentioned you were sitting on the couch watching the TV show, and obviously this is where the origins of the meetmagic .org came from. So because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, okay, we're connecting humans together who perhaps wouldn't necessarily connect in a normal day-to-day operations doing business. But from that, I'm sure there are benefits that they reap, not just by sharing, but they get business benefits from this, right? So
absolutely.
can you just talk to me about the purpose? Because you're big on purpose-led business, and the business of giving is huge, right?
Mm.
But the business of giving is compromised sometimes with businesses who are giving in order to receive.
Yes, and that's a very good point because I think if you go in there with an expectation of a purchase order, don't go in there.
That's right.
And there's a lot of young salespeople out there that think they've got a meeting with the CIO and they're going to go and ask that CIO to press hard 3 copies. It's not going to happen.
No.
Just, but they have to. I think there's a lot of. I mean, we've been in sales a long time, and I say this to a lot of salespeople who are sort of Gen Z onwards. There was no internet when we were around. If you wanted to go and talk to a company, like I said before, you don't knock on the front door. You
Yeah.
know, you'd have to sit in their lobby area and read the annual report.
Yeah.
If you were like me, you'd steal it and you'd take that annual report home and read it in bed and you'd highlight things that you thought were relevant. And then you go
Yeah.
back to the office and you cold call the CEO and say, hey, I've just been reading in your annual report. You're doing a transformation this year. I think we've got some great things. Can I come and have a conversation with you?
Yeah.
And he'd say yes or no. And if they said yes, you'd spend 2 weeks doing a PowerPoint presentation. And then you'd walk into the PowerPoint, you'd plug it in, he'd walk in, you'd be up on the television and you'd present your PowerPoint.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore.
No.
And that doesn't happen anymore because they've got the internet. They
Mm.
know about your product. They know who you are. They know everything about you before you've even walked in the room.
That's it.
And so your job really is to build trust,
Yeah.
not to sell product.
Yeah.
And this is why I say go and do your background and do some research, because it's, if you understand from their point of view what they're going through, give
Mm.
value and say, look, I'd like to share. So one of these big issues at the moment, I think, is APRA CPS 230. It's all about resilience in the network and stuff, and making sure things are running and
Mm.
secure when something happens. And that CPS, there's a lot of execs struggling with it. And so I think if you can tailor make something to fit that and say, look, we've been talking with other CIOs in the country. We'd love to share with you what's working for them. And so you get an understanding of maybe there's something there for you as well. And
Yeah.
that's giving value. And I think rather than saying, do you want to look at my data sets, and do you want to look at my dashboards because they can help you with your CPS 230? That's not going to work.
No.
And so it's just there's a bit of training that needs to be done.
Is there something else I can help with?
That's Siri talking
Thank
at
you,
me.
Siri.
Hold on,
You
shut it
know,
off.
do you know what that I'm often doing a workshop and I'll be on some sort of rant on my soapbox and all of a sudden Siri comes under my watch. I'm thinking, where did that come from?
I wish the people listened more than Siri, but it really is. The giving side of it really, the purpose side of it really for me is, I mean, the goal for Meet Magic is to deliver $250 million to charity over the next 4 or 5 years.
Nice.
And what Meet Magic it's a bit like Tinder for business. It's a two-sided marketplace, and on the one side we've got these big global tech companies.
Yeah.
It's companies like, pick a global tech company, a SaaS company is them. And on the other side there's 1,000 execs in 5 countries.
Yeah.
So these execs put themselves out there for once a month for a coffee or for a Zoom or a lunch, and they go and have a conversation.
Mm.
And the magic happens in the fact that they meet with somebody that they wouldn't necessarily normally meet with. And it might be that, you've got a head of product that's meeting with the head of a cybersecurity or sales guy or something, and they come
Mm.
together and have a chat over coffee or lunch. And what happens in that conversation is magic, because
Yeah.
all of a sudden the sales guy's hearing about the head of product and his challenges, rather than talking to the head of cyber, who's just going to hold everything back and not tell you. And so by the time you get to the head of cyber and have a conversation, you know every problem that's out there. And so that's where the magic, I think, exists.
And it sounds like why it works so well is there's no ulterior motive. There's no
No.
agenda. So one of my close friends out of the States, he's very big on these no agenda meetings, right?
Yeah.
So literally doing that and sitting down and getting to know this person on a human level. And when there's no agenda, it's amazing how many people open up and share stuff that perhaps they wouldn't if it was a discovery call or if it was a sales call.
Yeah, we've worked. I mean, I'd say we've got probably the best ROI on the planet right now, dollar for dollar spend. We've done the analysis. If you spend 15 grand on a conference to stand there for 3 days and lose your soul, you could go and have 15 meetings with the execs for that. And if you can't find opportunity in there, you've probably got some problems.
Yeah.
It's a bit like saying, you've had 10 Tinder dates and you haven't got lucky. Don't blame the app. The
Maybe
app
have a look in the mirror.
the app's done the job, right? And so it's just, and this is probably the reason why our customers like Okta have been with us for 4 years, and they keep
Yeah.
coming over and over and buying meetings over and over again,
Yeah.
because they're getting the value from that. But we teach them, don't go in and sell product. Make the meeting all about the exec. So ask them a question. Start the meeting off with, how long have you been involved with Meet Magic? What's the charity you're supporting? Let's talk about that first.
Yeah.
Opens up the heart.
Yeah.
And then the exec says, so what do you guys do? Oh,
Mm.
we solve problems in this area. And yeah, actually, I'd love to share with you some of the things that are happening with CISOs or CIOs. I'd love to get your opinion on that, whether or
Yeah.
not you're seeing the same thing. Conversation.
Yeah.
That's it. It's not,
Yeah.
there's nothing about products. In fact, there's probably a game you can play with salespeople, and you as a trainer, you probably love this one. You can basically say to every sales team, okay, talk to me about your customer for as long as you can, without mentioning your product, or without mentioning any project that you're doing with them.
Carl, have you been listening? When you installed all these things in those casinos, did you also install cameras in various places randomly?
No, but that is for me, it's a sign that you know that customer and not just,
It's a hundred. In fact, you I literally say that to sales teams. How often could you go into a customer and have a call without mentioning your product
yeah,
or out without mentioning how good you think your company is?
yeah.
Because it ain't about you. Your customer doesn't give a shit.
I can't. I'd say stop selling and you'll sell something.
That's right. That's right. If you be a good human being and show genuine interest, right? And this is why I think Meat Magic works so well, is that there's no ulterior motive, but there's a meeting of the minds that perhaps you wouldn't normally tend to meet with in your normal day-to-day role,
Yeah.
and serendipity tends to happen, right?
Yeah,
And when you think about 2 degrees of separation, who knows? You might know somebody through a conversation we've just had. They say, "Oh, you need to go and talk to this person." Me, the same with you, and all of a sudden, magic happens.
and Nottingham Forest is a magic word because that's Nottingham is all about forest of magic and whatever. And really, when I say we've done probably 3,500 connections over the past few years, the engagement rate from our clients is off the charts. So if you think about an SDR making phone calls, they might make 100 calls, they might get one meeting if they're lucky.
Yeah,
An SDR might cost you 50 grand, 60 grand, 70 grand a year.
yeah,
With the Meet Magic app, because these execs have already opted in, because they've already said yes to the meeting, if you send 10 messages through the platform, you get 6 to 7 meetings in the diary. It's off the charts. So if pipeline and new business starts with a conversation, go and have the conversations.
yeah.
Because that's what we're seeing is working. I mean, the execs that we've got, 80% of them have been with us since day one. They still continue to come with us. And we've signed new execs up today from Westpac and other big banks and whatever. They come on board.
Yeah.
80% of them are sticking around because they don't get sold to. And we always get feedback, negative feedback when a salesperson's been in there pushing too hard to flog product or flog tin. And we say to them, stop. We
Yeah.
don't want that because that's the bad experience for everybody. And it's
Which
bad.
reflects also on you guys as well.
Yeah, it kills the brand.
Yeah,
All of a sudden, the execs going, "Oh no, don't take those meetings because they just come in there and want to sell you stuff." Well, I'm like,
yeah,
we don't want that experience. And
yeah,
these really are conversations for long term. I mean, any salesperson knows, or they should know, 98% of your customer, your target market, are not in the market to buy your product right now, unless you've
that's
got some really good signals that you're paying for.
that's right. Or if you're an absolute expert in NLP techniques to try and get them to be influenced.
It's just we're looking at some of the in the platform. It's really cool actually. In the platform, we're looking at matching. We've got the execs now starting to launch projects. So if the execs looking at AI, data analytics, cyber, or whatever, they can actually request a vendor to come and talk to them. There's a simple RFI process in there. So it's
Yeah,
almost an expression of interest, which is kind of cool. So the exec, so being a member on the Meet Magic platform, the salespeople might get lucky and have an opportunity from someone that wants to go. But we're only dealing with certain top right quadrant kind of players, so it's not necessarily for the smaller mum and dad IT shop from out Bankstown.
yeah,
It's really for the because we know these execs will only buy top tier
yes,
because it's a risk.
that's
Otherwise,
it.
nobody got
That's it.
five buying IBM, and that's the strategy.
That's it. Um, and I'm sure there's also a vetting process you go through as well to make sure that you have the right people that are allowed to come onto the platform because you don't want to have your branding denigrated by like the dodgy I was going to say the door knocking salesperson, but you were one of those.
Well, I mean, yeah. Look, I'm just I'm probably a bit of an anomaly because I just don't really care about who you are. I mean, I respect you that you've climbed the ladder and got yourself a nice big job. But I've got billionaire friends who don't act like dickheads, so why should you? It's like,
You've
there's
got
some,
one that drives his own Rolls Royce and he
oh
drives
yeah,
his
exactly.
out in the back.
It's incredible, but I think there's something about the mid layers of management that you've got 3 kids in private school. Don't change here. It's don't disrupt my flow. I think that's very prominent in Australia. So
It is.
our job is to make sure that they feel comfortable knowing that they can actually give back very, very simply in a hassle-free way without being hassled. Because a lot of these execs don't want to go to those conferences because they know they're going to get stalked afterwards for 2 weeks.
That's
Because
it.
they all know that they get a free ticket, they got to do some speed dates, And those speed dates, they're sitting there, they're not engaged, they're checked out.
Yeah.
So we see the value that we bring for those big vendors is that they get to have really good conversations and build long-term strategic relationships. And it's not just necessarily net new calls. It could be they've got a deal happening. This happened with Dell actually, Dell and Qantas. Dell were all engaged at the lower levels in the architect level doing a
Yeah.
deal, but they had no C-suite engagement. And so they came through the platform and got access to the CIO, and they took their country manager in to do that, press the flesh.
Yeah.
Great, right? Because that now all of a sudden you unstick a deal
Mm.
through having an engagement at the C-suite. So
Yeah.
the platform's used not just for net new accounts, but it's also used for growing existing customers and getting higher up and expanding. So we're seeing a lot of that happening at the moment, which is good, We're seeing a lot
Brilliant.
of companies in America that want to set up an office in Australia. What do?
Mm.
Well, you got to hire somebody, or you can go and have 10 meetings. It will cost you 10 grand to go and have 10 exec meetings, and you can test your market before you hire that salesperson.
Yeah.
And I often say, why don't you actually buy 10 meetings for the salesperson? You'll get to see how good they are in the first month.
That's it. That's it.
So
It's
yeah,
a, it sounds like an absolutely brilliant platform. So, and obviously, as you mentioned before, you're looking at the top right-hand quadrant of people, so and organizations. So it's not going to be for everybody. From what you've learned through the entire process, whether it be your sales career, the work you're doing at meetmagic, and also, I guess, the network and the business people that you're associating with. For people, because I know we've already talked a little bit about how business is broken and the future of sales is moving away from just product flogging to now value generation and giving. For people who are listening to this, from your perspective, what are some key pieces of guidance or advice you'd give them in terms of 2020, 25 and beyond when we're trying to sell anything, a product, a service? What do we need to keep in mind? Because the old way is not working anymore.
Yeah, I think if you look at if you read the Gartner report, the one that said that the future of sales, you'll very clearly see that it's a mix of technology and people and product and stuff that's all the next phase. But what was really interesting in that report was it showed that I think 70% of decision makers, which were millennials now, prefer no sales rep engagement. If that doesn't scare a salesperson, I don't know what does. And
Yeah.
so I think that should tell you that there's something needs to change. These execs, they don't talk to the salespeople to get information. They talk to their peers and they talk to their community.
Yeah.
So the meetmagic community, these execs they can literally call each other and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about dealing with this particular company. Have you got any? What's your experience with them?"
Yeah.
That's the first port of call. And so I think if you've got a negative experience of being a hardcore selling company, and this is often driven by the street, right? I mean, I think Salesforce are the worst company on the planet for this. Driven by the street, NASDAQ listed, shareholders, they all want profit. And those go-to-market efficiency ratios, if they start falling below a certain amount, sell harder. And so they start pushing to close deals. I got stung by Salesforce by this myself. We got flogged into a 3-year contract that we didn't need.
Wow.
And this is driven by the streets. And so you've got this pressure that's coming from America to do deals and close business. And those rocket ships, the Wizards of the world, and all those companies that are on that trajectory, if they don't continue on that trajectory, then they lose the shareholding value. But not only that, but actually the valuations drop, and then all of a sudden people are asking questions: what the hell's going on? Is it really a rocket ship, or is it just a fluke? And so this is something I think for salespeople today, the only way to sell stuff is to stop selling. And this is fundamentally to go and ask for advice and seek guidance and stuff. And I see that all the time with what works and what doesn't work on our platform. I see people that get accepted and people that don't. The ones that don't get accepted are leading with a sale. Can I come and show you how my platform's done this for da 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 da? And I'm like, that's not working.
No.
And then the ones that work go, can I come and share with you some information we've got that we've found that might be valuable to you? That is different because I think relevance is really important. Every exec that we talk to that gets inbounded 30, 40, 50 emails a day, you're not getting cut through because they're not even opening your email.
No.
And if you start that email off with a sale, it's just immediate no, because
Yep.
they're not in the market for one. Why would they waste their time? It's just, and so you've got to be delivering some sort of value. And I know it's easy and cliche to say deliver value, but just do some research.
Mm.
Literally, go back to the old school days. Pick up. I've actually built my own GPT. So we've got a meetmagic GPT now, where you can actually
Okay.
type in, "Hey, I'm going to be meeting with this particular exec at Westpac. Can you tell me what their top 5 priorities are for the year?" And then you can say, "Can you give me 5 questions I can ask that would relate to my product without selling my product?" And there they are, 5 questions that you can ask as a thought leader in your field, which relate to their projects for the year, which will get them talking. You don't even have to try these days.
Which creates credibility.
All that stuff. Instead of just, can I come and show you? Can I come and open up a widget, open up a screen and share my dashboard with you? It's like, no.
Well, it's nuts. Even with engagements where you do have, and you're responding to like an RFP or an RFQ or whatever. Still today in 2025, how many organizations put their executive summary all about us and how big we are and how good we are, and nothing about the customer?
Yeah. And this, I think, is probably one of the fundamental problems, I think, with sales is they focus too much on me.
Yeah.
And not on the exec or the challenges that they're facing. And let's be fair, I mean they've only got a certain amount of hours in the day. And Andrew Madazak tells me he gets 30 to 40 requests a day. How do you filter through that noise?
Well,
this is the problem that, and he talks about this openly, that meetmagic gives him that filter through
yes.
all that noise.
Yes.
And that's,
Well, probably because it's all vetted by you guys vetting the right people. They still have to accept the match, right? But similar to Tinder. But
there's actually a costly signaling element to this as well, right? So
yeah,
for anyone that doesn't know Rory Sutherland is the #1 ad man on the planet, arguably one of the best behavioral scientists from an advertising perspective. He's my shareholder. I sold him. So I literally saw him on TikTok. I thought, this guy's amazing. I'm gonna tweet him. I tweeted him. He replied. I thought, I got a reply. Anyway, I said, I'm going to be in London. Let's catch up. We caught up. Me and the missus and my daughter. We caught up with him and had a coffee and came back home. Sat down, had a bottle of wine. I think I was eating corn on the cob with the missus. And I wrote to Rory, and I said to Rory, we've been thinking about you and what we've been doing and the conversation we had, and we'd love to invite you to become a shareholder. And I'd like to invite you to become my chief evangelist. He said, count me in.
down.
And this was, it was just genuine. It was
Yeah.
there was no ask. It was like we're genuinely curious about Rory. What he's taught us about human behavior is really interesting. For example, the opposite of a good idea can also be another good idea. It's not necessarily a bad idea, right? And most people are rational. And what you've got to be sometimes is the opposite of that.
Yes.
And if you do the opposite, because what being rational does for salespeople is it gets you to the same place as your competitors.
Yes.
And they do this because it's safe. So an example might be a tech company, they're going to spend some money on B2B. Let's do a conference. Let's do a roundtable. Let's do some adverts on LinkedIn. Everyone's doing that. And it might be, if you think about it in terms of, you as a person, you've got a couple of $1 million to spend. You want to go and buy a house. So what do? You sit down with your partner and you say, okay, we've got $2 million to spend. What do we want? We want a 3-bedroom house, close to schools, close to the shops, near the transport, so we can get to work and whatever. Maybe there's a gym or whatever. So you actually, maybe a pool in the back garden would be nice for the hot days. The problem with that approach is that everyone else is thinking like that.
Yeah.
And so when you find those 3 houses that fit that criteria, so have 15,000 other people.
It's competition.
Right? And so what you will do is you change your search criteria and say, I'm looking for 18th century Edwardian windows as your first point.
Yes.
Then and that changes the game. And so you turn up, nobody's there.
Yeah.
It's the same with what we're doing here with meetmagic. rather than doing the conferences and the outbound and all that SDR rubbish that's not working anymore, try something new.
Yeah.
Do the opposite of what you're thinking. Because the problem I think with a lot of these big tech companies is their CFO is not scrutinizing what's not working.
Mm,
They're spending $1 million on conferences and they're not getting $1 million in revenue. Well, that's broken. You're spending $5 to acquire $1 in revenue. That's
mm,
broken.
mm.
Flip that on its head and spend $1 to acquire five. So how do you
Yeah.
do that? Well, you got to reduce your go-to-market costs. How
Yeah.
do you do that? Well, you got to go cut out all of that scanning badge rubbish and go straight and have a meeting
Yeah.
and try and get a lucky accident that's going to come out of that. And that's what we teach is how to have those lucky accidents and do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. I think we're like a silver bullet, because I don't know anywhere on the planet, and this is a classic. One of our clients, Simba, wherever he is today, App on Me, I think great little tech company, SaaS company doing stuff in security or whatever they do with inside SaaS. He put 2 requests through our platform. He said, I'm going to be in Singapore next week. 2 requests through the platform. Within 24 hours, he's got a meeting in the diary with an exec director of DBS Bank and the head of cybersecurity for UBS. Show me anywhere. Show me any SDR that
No.
could do that.
No.
And so this is, Simba knows that you don't go in there and pitch your product, bro, because we're not.
Mm.
Go in there and build some connections, have a
Yeah.
conversation, and do something that
Yeah.
would lead more to opportunity. And so that's what we want. We want people to have a great experience,
Yeah.
and to learn the new way. The new way is not selling anymore. It's about
It's
being
not selling.
humble. Yeah,
I love that. So stop selling and it equals selling more.
yeah,
And as you mentioned before, we need to keep reminding people that 97 and 98% of your customers are not in the buying cycle right now. So you got to nurture that, right? So you got to play the longer game. Now, a lot of organizations refuse to play that longer game because they've got the pressure upon the head office or their senior directors, hit the number, hit the number, hit the number. So they
yeah,
keep dialing, smiling and dialing, smiling and dialing.
yeah. And it's
Change the game.
there's an argument. There's a case to be made for cold calling and emailing, and there's a case for made for the email still is the best.
Mm.
Use of outbound. I don't know, but I know it's going to get worse. I know it's going to get harder and harder. The more automation, the more these emails get generated by AI, and it's just rubbish that gets sent out.
Yeah.
It's just filling up inboxes and making it harder and harder. And I think, how are you going to get cut through after that? It's just going to get worse and worse. And so I often say, if you're spending 100 grand on an SDR, that's 100 meetings with meetmagic.
Yeah.
If you can't close 100 grand worth of business in 100 meetings, you got problems.
Significant problems.
Right. And so
Awesome.
that's it's CFOs not looking at that. They're looking at, let's just do what everybody else is doing because it's safe, and that's probably the best way not to get fired.
Yeah, that's right.
Marketing teams are the worst at this, right? They don't care about valuation of product, valuation of the company. They just care about hitting their KPIs. And this is the problem too. Marketing teams need to stop ticking their KPIs and start focusing on valuation, because if the CRO that's invested in, if the CRO's got stock, what's the CRO's job? Grow the business.
Yeah.
If you grow the revenue, you grow the valuation. If you grow the valuation, your stock is becoming more valuable, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're spending a lot of money and you're not getting a return, how about you stop doing that?
Yeah. And do something
How
else.
about you look at the things that are not working, that are not producing the ROI?
Yeah. 100%.
And this is the irony, Darren, here is that never gets scrutinized. And yet someone comes to me and spends 10 grand and gets 3 deals in pipeline and says it's not working.
What?
I get it all the time. I had a client last week. Get this. They went on the website, they bought one meeting, had a great meeting with the CEO of a retail company.
Yeah.
Thought, what? I mean, you got a meeting with a retail company for $1,000. Knock yourself out. That's amazing. They came back on and bought 3 more. Had 3 more meetings. Great. Over Christmas, they spent 10 grand on their credit card, bought 10 more. So I thought, I'm gonna have a check-in have a chat with them, see how it's all going. Yeah, this is the head of marketing, CMO, right? How's it going? Yeah, I don't think it's working. I said, let's have a look, shall we? So I logged into the platform. I can see, okay, you've spent 14 grand. You've had 5 meetings. You've got eight more meetings that are locked in. There's one more credit to be used.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those 5 meetings that you've had. How do they go? Only 3 of them have turned to pipeline.
What?
Bro, I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? That your CMO doesn't see that is world class.
3 out of 5. Mate, 3 out of 100 would be good in the real world.
And by the way, you sent 20 messages
Yeah,
and got 14 meetings locked in.
that is incredible. Something must be.
It's because the psychology of a lot of marketing teams is I'm going to do what everybody else is doing because that's safe.
Yeah,
It's herd mentality.
totally.
If you've been to Singapore, I love going to Singapore to get the kaya toast. You know, that really unhealthy toast that's like got 10,000 calories in it. It's just like toast with butter and sugar. It's like the fucking best thing ever. Really tasty, but it's really bad for you. But when you go to Singapore, you've got to have it. And so I'm walking down this street. There's 20 shops that sell kaya toast. Nobody in them. And I'm like, this is weird. And so I walk around the corner and there's a line of 50 people queuing up for kaya toast. Guess what I did? I queued up for kaya toast.
That's exactly.
The herd mentality is it
Yeah.
must be good, it must be safe, it must be okay. I'm going to get my money's worth.
Yeah,
That's what marketing teams are doing.
yeah,
Everybody else is doing roundtables. Everybody else is sponsoring Gartner. Everybody else is doing this. I better do that. Every year, it's the same bullshit. You spent 250 grand on Gartner, and what have you got? 300 scan badges. How's that got you? Meanwhile,
Nothing.
the salespeople are sitting at the bottom of the funnel with no leads.
Yeah. How's that working for you?
It's just broken. And so if you think about this funnel, top of funnel metrics, they're all coming in, scan badges, intent, all this rubbish, right?
Yeah.
Working it through the funnel, dropping it out the bottom of the funnel, and give a salesperson a lead. Why are salespeople sitting on 30 to 40% attainment and losing their jobs? And you're spending all these millions of dollars on this intent, and you're ticking the box saying, "Yeah, we're hitting our numbers, your KPIs." Yeah, but there's no fucking business coming in.
That's right.
Salespeople, and so salespeople have become reliant on leads from marketing.
Yeah.
Those leads are not leads.
No.
90% of those things that they're scanning badges are not converting. You're wasting your money.
Totally.
And so why don't you flip it on its head and go and have a meeting first? Because that's it's $1,000 and you'll get a meeting.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense.
It's psychology, it's human behavior. And I'm working with Rory at the moment and some amazing people in the psychology space to try and understand this more. And so we can position our messaging a lot better to get marketing teams to understand this. Then marketing teams have to start working with finance, have to. Those CMOs have to get with the CFO and say, hey, we spent $1 million this year. We've only got like 50 grand in revenue out of that. What should we do? Well, what's working? What's not working? Well, we spent $200,000 on Google Ads. What have we got from that? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Okay, well, how about we stop doing that?
We think it's working, but there's no metric. There's no data. There's no data.
It's crazy.
Amazing.
I mean, some amazing people in this space are trying to change people's minds, and I think in order to change people, and this is why meetmagic is not been this rocket ship. It's been this slow evolution of growing because it takes time to change people's behavior.
Yes.
And that's what we're seeing. But the more people talk about it, we've not chased a sale in 2 years, by the way.
Yeah, it's nice.
They come to us now because they've had a great experience. They leave, they go to another job, they come back, and so we've got that cycle, which is great. But the execs are the same, which is amazing. We're starting to see the execs leaving jobs like Brad, who left Kmart, gone to Ampol. They continue with us and build the impact. So it's you build up over time that credibility. And it's the same with a salesperson. a company that's trying to break into the market here in Australia or Singapore or New Zealand, we can get you into for 10, 20, 30 conversations quicker than anybody else on the planet.
Yeah.
You'll be able to prove whether or not you've got a market here for yourself, or whether or not you. And we had I'll tell you who we did some work for just recently. Craig Goodman. So Craig Goodman is the Goodman Group. He's the
Mhm.
brothers. You might see the green logos with Goodman on there.
Yeah.
That Goodman family. So he's got a cybersecurity company, and it went through a change. But he wanted to go and have some conversations with CISOs about the product that he's built, about whether or not there's a fit for it in the market and where it fits from all this sort of different technical perspective. And so he just opened up the door and had 10 conversations within a month with CISOs.
Yeah.
And got an understanding about where to go next with his product.
Yeah.
And so the meetings can be used for so many different reasons. And guess what? Out of those 10 meetings that he's had, he's got follow-on conversations with people that actually want to do some business with them.
Isn't that interesting? Lead with human and business comes.
Just go and have
Awesome.
a conversation and yeah, it's just stop
Brilliant.
selling. It's
Stop selling. Stop selling. Stop
it's
selling.
2025. They've got the internet. They can do their own research.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Carl, this has been an absolute privilege having you on the podcast. For people who want to know more about you, connect with you, and also specifically learn more about meetmagic and how they might be able to leverage that as part of their, I guess, their business strategy, for want of a better term, but remembering it's not about flogging your product, it's about giving. Where's the best place for them to do so?
Meetmagic.org. That's it. It's literally my phone number's on there. You can even call me directly. I literally take every call. I pick up every call.
Yeah.
And I get these cold callers calling me. Oh man. Some of them are trying to sell me meetings. And I go,
Have you done your research, my friend?
bro, do you know who we are? No. Well, I think, aren't you the founder of meetmagic? I said, you know what? It's ludicrous that people are actually paying money for these people to piss the market off. Really
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
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 But yeah, Darren, it's more than happy to have a chat with you. I think the sales training side of it is really interesting. From my perspective, we've got 70 global tech vendors as customers, and I can tell you at least half of them need training because what they're doing is just
Not
diabolical.
working. Yeah.
Well, it's just they've got this American mentality of let's hit the phones, let's get the SDRs and they just smash people.
Yeah.
And it's just like the wrong approach in this country. It's
It
just
is.
not. And
It is.
I see some of the messages that go through the platform, and I think that's just really heavy selling. And I've just got to go back to them and say, well, I'm not putting you in front of that exec.
Yeah.
You're not going to have it because until you change your engagement strategy, and this is the same as anybody that's trying to change a behavior. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and nothing's going to change.
Definition of insanity. Absolutely.
It is, and you've got to be. If you want to have a lucky accident, you've got to do something different.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the last analogy from Rory. So Rory Sutherland talks about the bees and evolution, and this is marketing and how marketing needs to evolve. In the bee world, you often get the queen bee. She does a wiggle dance.
Yeah.
She flies over there, and then 50 million bees follow her. And wherever the queen bee goes, everyone goes. But there's always 20% that veer off that way.
Mm-hmm.
Queen bee's gone into the field full of cows. And all the cows are there eating the grass and the flowers. And so the bees are now competing with the cows for the pollen and the flowers, right? This is marketing. They're competing with each other, doing the same thing with everybody else. Standing there at the Gartner conference with 30 other vendors trying to sell to one CISO. It's like, bro, what are you doing? But that's a highly competitive market inside that field with the cows and the bees. Those 20% of other bees have just decided to go that way. And they've flown over the hill, and there's a whole field full of flowers and no cows. And that lucky accident produces more pollen than those 50 million bees that have gone over there. This is marketing today.
Yeah.
Stop doing what everybody else is doing.
And do something different.
Do something different.
Brilliant.
and you just might be a little bit lucky, and a little bit of magic might occur.
That is awesome. I love the way you ended that. Carl, absolute pleasure, my friend. We'll have to keep this conversation going. So I want to thank you for all the value you've created and for the great work you're doing at meetmagic, and may it continue to be adding continual value in the marketplace and hitting that target of 250 million in terms of charitable donations. So keep up the great work, mate, and thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Appreciate it. If we can do anything together, let's do it.
Excellent. Thanks, mate. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.